When I finally landed my dream job, my husband's family reacted with outrage. His mother sneered, "A good wife stays home. Quit before you embarrass us." To my shock, my husband nodded in agreement, saying, "It's what's best for the family." That night, I made a life-changing decision. By morning, I was gone, and so was something they desperately wanted back. I was still in the kitchen when my mother-in-law snapped at me, as if I'd insulted her personally. "A good wife stays home. Quit before you embarrass us," she hissed. I barely had time to process it before my husband Ryan nodded, arms crossed and tone final, as if the decision had already been made. What's best for the family, not for me. That night, while everyone slept peacefully, something inside me broke. I was done with always doing what they expected. By the next morning, I was gone, and I wasn't empty-handed. My name is Laura, and I was married to Ryan for 6 years. We lived in a mid-sized Texas town where his family had deep roots and plenty of money. They weren't billionaires, but they owned several local businesses and carried themselves like royalty. Ryan's mother, Diane, was the unspoken queen of the family, ruling with an iron grip beneath sweet smiles and biting remarks. His father, William, rarely said anything unless he was agreeing with Diane. Ryan was their golden boy, their pride, and I was the wife who never quite measured up. I should have seen it coming. Right from the start, they made it clear: a wife stays home, focuses on family, and knows her place. For years, I played along. I worked part-time, always choosing jobs that wouldn't interfere with my duties as a wife. I cooked, cleaned, and hosted endless family gatherings. I kept quiet when Ryan's father complained about modern women or when Diane insisted that a career woman simply wouldn't have time for her husband. But I had dreams before I met Ryan. I'd earned my degree in business and technology and never wanted to be confined to a home. Not that there's anything wrong with it, it just wasn't who I was. Then, out of the blue, my dream job came along. A tech company in Austin offered me a high-paying management position, everything I'd been striving for. For the first time in years, I felt alive. I thought Ryan would be happy for me. Instead, he acted as if I were running off to join the circus. "You don't need to work," he said, shaking his head. "My salary is more than enough." I tried explaining it wasn't about money, it was about having something that was truly mine. But he either didn't understand or he did and simply didn't care. That evening, his entire family gathered. Suddenly, it wasn't just Ryan against me, it was all of them. Diane sat across from me, her calm face belying the sharpness in her tone. "A wife should never put herself before her husband," she said. "This job is a disgrace. People will talk, they'll think Ryan isn't providing for you." William nodded as if that made perfect sense, and Ryan sat silently, arms crossed, as if he'd already made the decision for me. That's when I realized it was never about the job, it was about control. They didn't want me to be independent, they wanted me to be just like them, quiet, obedient, and thankful for what Ryan provided. Diane's voice dropped even lower. "A good wife stays home. Quit before you embarrass us." I looked at Ryan, and then came the final betrayal. "It's what's best for the family," he said, as if my desire for something more was selfish. That night, Ryan kissed me on the forehead and said, "We'll talk more tomorrow." But we never did. I lay awake for hours, heart pounding, thinking about every time I compromised, the job offers I turned down right after college because Ryan said it wasn't the right time, the travel dreams postponed until we're settled. Countless moments when I made myself smaller to fit into his world. And I was done. I quietly got up, hands shaking. I wasn't just leaving, I was taking back something they desperately wanted. I walked to the filing cabinet and pulled out a folder. Inside was the deed to Ryan's grandfather's lake house. Before we married, his grandfather had adored me and left the house in my name when he passed. Ryan's family had spent years pressuring me to sign it over, insisting it wasn't really mine, but belonged to the family. But it was mine, and now it would be my safety net. By sunrise, I was gone. I packed a bag, grabbed the deed, and drove to Austin without leaving a note, letting them wake up to uncertainty. Calls started coming in before noon, first from Ryan, then Diane, and finally Ryan's sister, crying as if someone had died. "You can't do this," Ryan shouted when I finally answered. "You're my wife, that means it's ours." I laughed softly. "Funny, you didn't seem to think we were partners last night." Then his mother's voice, trembling with rage, crackled over the phone. "You will bring that deed back today." I simply said, "No." They tried threats, guilt trips, even lawyer warnings, but I'd already spoken to my own attorney. Legally, they had nothing. Then Ryan did the one thing I never expected. He showed up at my new apartment. I wasn't expecting him at all. I opened the door and there he was in the hallway, seething with anger. "We need to talk," he said, pushing past me before I could protest. He looked around the small apartment like it was a slap in the face, like he couldn't believe I'd choose this over him. "You made your point," he said. "Now come home." I stared at him. "Home," he repeated, exasperated. "I get it, you needed to prove something. Fine, you did. Now it's time to be serious." I exhaled slowly. He still didn't understand. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was freeing myself. But I kept that to myself and only smiled. "I haven't even started yet," Ryan said, sitting on my couch as if he still had a claim over me, as if I were just acting out and he was here to bring me back. His confidence was suffocating. I get it, he added, running his hand through his hair like the whole situation was just tiring. You're upset. You needed to prove a point, and you did. But enough's enough. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. What exactly were you trying to prove? He said with a sigh, as if leaving meant you didn't need him. His jaw tightened. Let's be real, Laura, you're not built for this. You don't want to live in a tiny apartment, working long hours all alone. This is just a phase, he continued. I'd heard that before. When I landed my first job in college, his mother called it a phase. When I mentioned going back for my master's, Ryan laughed and said I'd grow out of it. Every time I tried to do something for myself, they treated me like a child playing make-believe. I wasn't pretending. I walked over to the table and picked up a thick envelope. What's that? He asked, narrowing his eyes. I tossed it onto his lap. Ryan opened it, and as his eyes scanned the first few lines, the color drained from his face. It was the paperwork for the sale of the lake house. What is this? He stammered, flipping through the pages as if he could change the words by staring hard enough. It's done, I said simply. He looked up at me, his face a blend of shock and anger. You sold it? He demanded, his hands clenching the papers until his knuckles turned white. You had no right. That made me laugh, a sharp, humorless sound. No right? You mean I had no right to make my own choices? Ryan leaped from the couch, jaw set. That house was meant to stay in the family. Isn't that funny? I replied, for 6 years, your family told me I wasn't really part of it. His mouth opened and closed, leaving him speechless. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You thought I'd always be there? That I'd give up everything just like your mother did, that I'd wake up one day and forget I ever had dreams. Ryan swallowed hard, his expression unreadable. I smiled, remembering every word. He looked back at the papers, shaking his head. You just don't get it, Laura. You ruined everything. But he still didn't understand. I wasn't ruining anything, I was finally reclaiming what was mine. Ryan stormed out. I thought maybe, just maybe, he would let it go. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke to a barrage of missed calls. Ryan, his mother, his father, his sister, all leaving sobbing voicemails about how I had torn the family apart. Then came a flood of messages from their friends, harsh words, calling me selfish, ungrateful, a disgrace to marriage. Someone even posted on a local Facebook group, labeling me a gold digger who used Ryan and then ran off with the family inheritance. I wasn't surprised, the whole town had been under their thumb for decades. I knew they'd do anything to paint me as the villain, but I wasn't backing down. Then the lawsuit arrived. Ryan's family actually tried to sue me, claiming I'd fraudulently obtained the lake house by coercing Ryan's grandfather into leaving it to me. I nearly laughed when I saw it. They were grasping at straws and had no case. The will was ironclad and I had top-notch lawyers. But that wasn't the point. They didn't expect to win. They just wanted to drain me dry with legal fees and make me suffer. Ryan even texted, give back the house money and everything will go away. I stared at my phone, shaking my head. They still thought I'd cave, that I'd break. They forgot I spent 6 years surviving them, and now it was my turn to fight. A few days later, I received a call from someone unexpected, Ryan's grandfather's lawyer, the same man who handled the will. I heard about what they're trying to do, he said with a hint of amusement. Let me help. I frowned. Why? After a pause, he lowered his voice. Because I knew Ryan's grandfather well, and I know he left you that house for a reason. He wanted you to have an escape. My breath caught. Did he really say that? Not in those exact words, he admitted, but he always believed I was different, that I had a mind of my own. He didn't want me trapped. I swallowed hard. For the first time in weeks, tears burned my eyes, not from sadness, but because, for the first time in years, someone truly saw me. With his help, we filed a countersuit for harassment and defamation. We sent legal warnings to everyone who had slandered me online, threatening defamation lawsuits. Almost immediately, the tone shifted. The Facebook posts vanished overnight, the nasty messages stopped, and then came the final blow. Ryan's parents were forced to drop their lawsuit because their businesses weren't as robust as they pretended. The legal fees were bleeding them dry, and just like that, their war ended with a whimper. But I wasn't finished yet. I had one final card to play, and I was determined to show them what happens when you try to break someone who has nothing left to lose. Ryan's family was hemorrhaging money, and they knew it. Their lawsuit had backfired. The lake house funds were untouchable, and now their reputation was crumbling. For the first time, they weren't in control. But I wasn't going to let them recover, not when I was ready to end this for good. One night, while going through my old emails, I found something that made me stop cold, an old message from Ryan's grandfather, sent years before he passed. I'd long forgotten it, but now, amid everything else, it blazed like a neon sign. If anything happens to me, check the safe in my study. The combination is April 18th, 62. My heart skipped a beat. Ryan's grandfather had a safe, and he trusted me with the code. I already knew where it was. The last time I visited the lake house before Ryan's family tried to claim it, I'd seen it built into the wall behind an old bookshelf. I hadn't thought much of it then, but now I was very curious about what he had left. I drove to the lake house at 2 a.m. It was still technically mine since the sale wasn't finalized, so I still had the keys. I wasn't taking any risks. If Ryan's family saw me, they'd lose it. I parked a little way down the road, cut through the trees, and slipped in through the back door. The house was dark and untouched since I left. I moved quickly, heading straight for the study. My hands trembled as I pushed the bookshelf aside, revealing the hidden safe. I punched in the numbers, April 18th, 62, and with a soft click, it opened. Inside were dozens of folders. I pulled one out and opened it, sucking in a breath. It was bank records of illegal financial transactions, all linking back to Ryan's father. Ryan's family had always boasted about their successful businesses, but these documents told a very different story. There were fake invoices, offshore accounts, shell companies used to launder money. It was massive fraud. If this got out, his father wouldn't just lose money, he'd go to prison. And now I had it all. Their entire empire wasn't just crumbling, it was rotting from the inside, and I was about to set it on fire. I made copies of everything and sent a single email to an investigative journalist. No explanation, no warning, just the documents. I waited. 2 weeks later, the story exploded. The headline read, "Prominent local businessman under federal investigation for financial crimes." Ryan's father was finished. His business was shut down overnight, and their house was foreclosed. The same people who once adored them now turned their backs, and Ryan, for the first time, wasn't the golden boy anymore. I knew he'd come back, and sure enough, a week after the story broke, he showed up at my apartment again. But this time, he looked different. Not angry or smug, just lost. "You did this?" he said quietly. I didn't answer. I just watched him exhale sharply, running a hand through his messy hair. "You ruined my family," I said, tilting my head. "No, Ryan, your family ruined itself. I stopped protecting them." He swallowed hard, and for the first time, I believe he truly saw me, not as his wife or as someone he could control, but as the woman who outsmarted him at his own game. Then Ryan said something I never expected to hear. I was wrong. But it was too late. I stepped back, giving him one final look. "Yeah, you were," I said, and shut the door on him forever. Ryan's visit should have been the end. His father was facing federal charges, their family was bankrupt, and their prized reputation was in ruins. Yet people like Ryan don't just vanish. They linger. I should have known he wouldn't go quietly. 2 weeks later, I received a text from Diane. No call, no voicemail, just a simple message, "We need to talk. Family dinner Saturday. Be there." As if nothing had happened and I was still one of them. I almost laughed. After all that, they truly thought I'd walk in like a chastised child and listen. But something made me pause. I knew Diane well enough to realize this wasn't a peace offering. It was a trap. I would be walking right into it. That Saturday, I drove to what remained of their once grand estate. The mansion they once boasted about now looked abandoned. The lawn was overgrown, the shutters were peeling, and the driveway, once filled with luxury cars, held only an old sedan. They had lost everything, and I wasn't sorry. I stepped inside, and the heavy atmosphere hit me immediately. Ryan was already there, standing by the fireplace. His sister sat on the couch with red-rimmed eyes, and at the head of the table, perfectly poised, was Diane. She motioned for me to sit across from her, but I didn't. I just leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I assume this isn't a family reunion," I said. Diane exhaled sharply, her fingers twitching around a half-empty wine glass. "You went too far," she accused. "Did you? You destroyed us." Ryan's sister snapped in. "You sold Grandpa's house. You ruined our business." I exposed the truth. I cut in. "That wasn't my doing. That was your father's crimes finally catching up to him." Diane slammed her glass down. "You didn't have to involve the press." I laughed, a short, cold sound. "What did you expect? That I'd stay silent and let you drag me through the mud while you all played the victims?" Ryan, who had been silent until now, finally spoke in a low murmur. "We could have fixed this." I turned to him, replying, "Fixed what? Your father's fraud? Your mother's manipulation? Or were you just hoping I'd come crawling back like always?" His fists clenched. "You didn't have to burn it all down." For a moment, the room went silent. Then I said, "Maybe I did." Diane's jaw tightened. "If you have any decency left, return the money from the house sale. It was meant to stay in the family." A cold feeling settled in my chest. Even now, as everything crumbled, she tried to control me as if I owed them something. I took a slow breath and said, "What family, Diane?" I gestured around. "Look at you all. You turned on me the moment I did something for myself. You never saw me as part of this family. You just wanted me under your thumb. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't finished. Leaning in, I added in a soft yet sharp voice, your husband is going to prison, and you won't have a single dollar to your name. Diane's face went white, and Ryan's sister stifled a cry, covering her mouth. For the first time, I saw fear in Ryan's eyes, not anger, not denial, just fear, as he finally understood what I had known all along. There was no turning back. I headed for the door, feeling I had nothing left to say. But as my hand reached for the handle, Ryan spoke again, Laura. I hesitated, not because I wanted to listen, but because there was something different in his tone. When I turned back, his expression was raw, not angry, not arrogant, just lost. I loved you, he said quietly, and for a moment I almost believed him. But love isn't control, it isn't possession, and it certainly isn't about making someone feel small so they never leave. I nodded once. Maybe you did, then walked out the door. For the first time in years, I felt free. A month later, Ryan's father was arrested. The trial was brutal, the evidence overwhelming, and he took a plea deal to avoid a harsher sentence. Diane tried to maintain her social standing, but without her husband's money and influence, she became just another forgotten socialite. Ryan's sister moved away, and I heard Ryan tried to rebuild his life, though he was forever marked by his family's legacy. As for me, my career in Austin took off. I found true friends, people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could sacrifice. Every so often, I'd think back to that lakeside house, the one they swore would never belong to me, the one I outmaneuvered them over, and I'd smile. In the end, they tried to erase me, but I was the one who erased them. Months after that fateful dinner, I found myself immersed in a life I never thought possible. Austin wasn't just a place, it was a new beginning. My career blossomed, and each day, I built a network of people who valued me for who I was. I began hosting workshops on self-empowerment and resilience, sharing my story to help others break free from toxic bonds. Every lecture, every shared smile, reminded me that my past did not define my future. Yet, on quiet evenings, I'd sometimes catch myself reflecting on that painful confrontation. There was no sudden moment of regret or longing, only a sober acknowledgement of lessons learned. I understood that the collapse of my former life was not an end, but rather a painful necessary step toward rebuilding myself. In every struggle, I discovered strength. In every betrayal, I found clarity. One crisp autumn morning, as I prepared for a community event, I received a note in the mail. It wasn't from Ryan or Diane, but from an old friend who had been there through thick and thin, a gentle reminder of who I once was and who I had become. The note read, "Sometimes letting go is the only way to set yourself free. Proud of you." Those simple words filled me with a warm certainty. I had taken control of my own narrative, and I was finally at peace with the choices I'd made. Later that year, I attended a small art exhibit featuring local voices of transformation. Amidst the crowd, I saw a familiar figure from my past, Ryan. His eyes met mine across the room, filled with a mix of sorrow and hope. For a moment, memories of our bitter exchanges flashed in my mind, but then his gaze softened. He approached slowly, almost hesitantly, as if trying to bridge an unspoken chasm. "Laura," he began, his voice quiet and raw, "I've been trying to fix things, to make amends for all the pain." He paused, the weight of regret evident in his eyes. "I lost so much, everything I thought mattered, and in the process, I lost you. I'm sorry." I regarded him carefully. The anger and betrayal that had once burned so fiercely had long since cooled into a respectful distance. "Ryan," I replied, "our paths have diverged, and we both have scars that may never fully heal. I'm not here to reopen old wounds. I'm here to embrace a future where I no longer let anyone define my worth." He nodded, accepting my words with quiet understanding. There was no promise of reconciliation, just an acknowledgement of our shared past and the lessons it had etched into our souls. In that brief exchange, I felt a sense of finality, not because we made amends, but because we recognized that our lives had irrevocably moved on. In the months that followed, I continued to nurture my newfound freedom. I explored new hobbies, forged deeper friendships, and even allowed myself to consider the possibility of new love, one built on mutual respect and a shared commitment to growth. The family that once tried to control me had dissolved into distant memories, their influence fading with every step I took forward. One evening, as I stood on the balcony of my modest apartment overlooking the city skyline, I realized that the person staring back at me in the mirror was not someone defined by past betrayals or regrets, but someone resilient and whole. I had rewritten my story on my own terms, turning pain into power and isolation into independence. In the end, I learned that true freedom comes from within. The ghosts of yesterday no longer haunted me. Instead, they served as reminders of the journey that had led me here. I had faced down the past, confronted the people who once tried to hold me back, and emerged stronger than ever. And with every new day, I chose to celebrate the life I had reclaimed, a life defined not by the scars of loss, but by the strength of my resolve and the beauty of my independence.